New scrutiny on Republican Senator Mike Lee for his involvement in discussions that could have overthrown the 2020 election. These text messages that were sent to the top folks in the White House. This was in the days after the election through January. Mike Lee's role in Trump's attempted coup reads one headline. Mike Lee has some explaining to do, according to the Washington Post. And Mike Lee busted for lying about his role in the election scheme. Here is how he sounded on January 6th.
Our job is to open and then count. Open, then count. That's it. That's all there is. Now, there are, of course, rare instances in which multiple slates of electors can be submitted by the same state. That doesn't happen very often. Happened in 1960. It happened in 1876. That did not happen here. Thank heavens. And let's hope that it never does.
Let's hope it never happens, that there are alternate slates. This is the Mike Lee you meet in public. That was on television on a day when he knew many would be watching, January 6th, and you get the impression of an honest conservative, very concerned about the state of democracy. And yet, this is what he was secretly texting. CNN first obtained these in their scoop. NBC has verified the text here for our coverage. Lee told the chief of staff on November 7th, exhaust every legal and constitutional remedy. And then referring to one of Trump's most controversial lawyers, he has really interesting research on this. Now, that's the lawyer who was pushing the coup plans. Bob Woodward, who knows his way around White House corruption, has a report that Lee was shocked to receive a memo from Eastman on January 2nd about 7 states transmitting dual states of electors. But Lee's text about the really interesting research was back in November. It's up to Mike Lee to clarify why he seemed so supportive of going down this road in private. On December 8th, Lee also texted the chief of staff, if a very small handful of states were to have legislatures appoint alternate state of delegates, there could be a path. Well, a path to what is the question? We are joined by former acting U.S. Solicitor General Neil Katyal to get back into it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I mentioned the 2 portraits here because it's not news to our viewers that politicians say one thing and do another. But rarely do you have it so close together. Mike Lee seems to be pushing the idea that this stuff would just happen, and if it did, it would create a tougher call for Congress to potentially get involved or overthrow the outcome. And yet the texts at a legal or investigative level, at least, Neil, seem to raise questions about what he was trying to do. Break it down for us.
100%, Ari. So I guess it turns out that Mike Lee was for alternative slates of electors before he was against them. And it is so sad because I didn't think of Mike Lee as some ordinary politician. I've had a great deal of respect for him. I used to debate him on C-SPAN and stuff on constitutional topics. His dad was a former Solicitor General of the United States, enormously well respected, and nobody ever doubted that man's love of the country and Constitution. And what these emails depict is something far different, twisted, and different. It's a win-at-all-costs mentality. Indeed, the texts show the only reason that Mike Lee backs down from this crazy plot, it's not because it's wrong, it's because he can't get it to succeed. Because it's so harebrained, it can't work. But that's the reason, and it shows what Donald Trump has done to the Republican Party, even, formerly good-meaning people like Mike Lee, and they don't even realize it. I mean, Mike Lee 2 weeks ago voted against Justice Jackson, Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination, because he said that she wouldn't uphold the Constitution. My God, I mean, when push came to shove and Mike Lee was asked to uphold the Constitution at a dark moment, what did he do? He plotted with Mark Meadows and others to try and subvert our constitutional democracy. It's a disgrace.
Yeah. Well, I see your concern. I appreciate your candor, Neil. I mean, when you look at that night, I mean, I remember I'm sure you do, many people do. It was this terrible day with deaths and violence at the Capitol, and then they come back to the Senate floor, and you see Mike Lee clearly trying to turn that corner and try to present himself as someone who says, hey, guys, this isn't how it works. He clearly doesn't want to own the violence that occurred on the floor, where he was standing. And yet, now it's all out. And this, again, goes to why these investigations matter. I'm not aware of anyone at this juncture suggesting any criminal liability for Senator Lee. We're talking about something more nuanced but quite important. Your former colleague, you were acting Solicitor General. Attorney General Holder was the person in charge of DOJ for a period of time. This is what he says, and I remind viewers, he doesn't weigh in on everything, but he says Mike Lee must be confronted about his, quote, actions to subvert our electoral process and held accountable. And the media, he says, should look at this not as partisan, but as part of the job of getting to the bottom of it. What do you think of that point from Holder and what Lee owes at least his constituents, if not the nation?
Eric Holder's absolutely right, 100%. I mean, and it may not be criminal, Ari, it might be, but it's certainly a betrayal of our constitutional democracy, or that's the way it looks from these texts. Now, maybe he's got some explanation. I'd like to hear it. And I'd like to hear people like Senator Romney, who've stood up for the Constitution in these moments from his state, ask some of these questions. And there's a really important article today, Ari, in The Bulwark by Amanda Carpenter. And what she does is she really goes into an explanation of what Senator Lee was doing, that he was trying to get legislators to try and throw out the popular vote. And she goes through this in some detail. And I guess you could say, well, nobody's perfect. I mean, Coup among us hasn't made a rush to judgment and realized they made a mistake. But, this is really a constitutional betrayal. This is not some minor thing.
Neil Katyal with the democracy is dying dad joke pun. We're here for it. Congressman Raskin also speaking out. Take a listen.
This was a coup organized by the president against the vice president and against the Congress in order to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Trump was prepared to seize the presidency and likely to invoke the Insurrection Act and declare martial law.
Based on what he knows, your response to that and the fact that at every turn, Trump never showed the ultimate willingness. I'm not going to use a word like boldness, but whatever you want to call it, he didn't do some of those things when he was alone. He wanted the AG or someone to cover him. Your final reaction there?
Right. I mean, Congressman Raskin obviously has access to information that you and I don't, but the information we've seen shows exactly that Trump would have done it if he could get away with it. And he enlisted, or at least he had the support of all sorts of people like Mike Lee, who were plotting before, during, and after the election to try and hand Trump the presidency, even if he didn't win the actual vote or the electoral college vote. I mean, it doesn't get more chilling than this, Ari. And so, I know we talk about crime a lot and so on, but there's a much deeper thing here, which is the essence of what our democracy is giving everyone the right to vote. And what these people wanted to do was literally take it away and give it to the hands of some state legislators. Most Americans don't even know who their state legislators are, and have them pick the next president instead of the voters. Insane.
And steal the election. Exactly. Neil Katyal, thank you, sir.